guess, begin by saying thank you to you all for registering. Thank you to Andrew Hirst, Otto, and Ryan Barnes, who are joining me today as well. You'll see their faces on screen and on the Zoom as well. In terms of myself, just a quick intro. My name's Jack Thiel. I'm the APAC commercial lead at Mayday, and very fortunate to be trusted as the host for these sessions. I always enjoy them. I'm an accountant by trade, started my career with PwC and spent a few years in a local advisory firm, which was really at the height of Xero's growth. And there was a lot going on. It was a very exciting time, and I really loved the tech space, which is why for the last 5 to 6 years, I've been fortunate to work in and around accounting tech. I really enjoy it. I love being on this side. I love working with accountants in practice, accountants in in-house roles as well, and just helping to kind of move the industry forward. In terms of Mayday itself, we're for larger Xero users. The majority of our customers have in-house finance teams, like I'm sure many of you are. And our mission is to mend month end, starting with the needs of multi-entity businesses. So we're talking about recharges, cross-entity bank reconciliations, keeping intercompany loans in balance, and a whole raft of other bits and pieces in that space. We're fortunate to have more than 225-star reviews on the Xero App Store. We won Emerging App of the Year last year, and are thrilled about the opportunity to be supporting such an amazing customer base, working with a lot of people like yourselves. Interestingly, though, over the last couple of years, in listening to our own customers, we've learned that there is, or at least there was, and hopefully we're doing something about it now, a very much an unmet need and gap in the content and education for medium to large Xero businesses. A lot of them left asking the question, is Xero still the right system for me? Can I scale with it? How long for? Is that indefinite? Or is there going to be an eventual point, a tipping point where I'm going to have to leave Xero and outgrow it? The nature of that uncertainty and not having an answer to those questions has then led a lot of people to act earlier than they need to, means moving off of Xero, going to an ERP. And as we all probably are aware, the ERP move is incredibly expensive, and that's before 58% of those implementations fail. One of our own customers described the process as horrible and hectic, having attempted it before. So that's why we came up with this, I suppose, this series, this community, this kind of content to really provide peace of mind to everyone out there. The peace of mind that you can scale with Xero as your accounting platform into your growth phase as a business. But to do that, to provide peace of mind to yourselves, we obviously need precedent. We want to give you answers. We want to give you solutions. We want to show what's been achieved before and fill that gap. So that's really where this session, this series comes in, and all of the speakers that you're going to be hearing from are people who have done this and who have successfully scaled up with Xero. Now, beyond today, or prior to today, we ran a series earlier in the year called Building an Enterprise Level System with Xero. That was very much around how you can build a best-in-class tech stack around the platform. We had an amazing response to that. I was lucky enough to be joined by, it was about 40 different industry-leading speakers. Ryan was on one of those sessions as well, so it was a pleasure to have that conversation, a really good conversation at the time too. Definitely check out the recording. We had more than 600 people come along to the series, and the feedback was very encouraging that, hey, we need more of this. We want to see more of it. So that's why we're back now with Xero for Groups, the app advantage. We wanted to niche it down a little bit further, get a little bit more focused on content for finance leaders who are managing a group of companies specifically. So that might be a corporate group with a parent entity, a joint venture. You might have multiple businesses owned by the same people. Maybe that's a restaurant group, a property development business, or a chain of smoothie bars. Whatever it is, you've got economic activity between those entities, and that leads to some challenges on Xero. And so we're here to kind of help try and give you some solutions to those pain points so you don't go down an unnecessary and very expensive pathway. So before introductions, I know I'm talking a lot, but I wanted to pull up a quick poll. Firstly, who's currently on Xero? So I've just launched that now. If you don't mind responding to it, fingers crossed everybody can see it. Okay, great. We've got 100% of you on Xero, which is awesome to see. I figured that might be the case given the title of the series, so I'll finish that one up. And then I guess the next one is in terms of the size of the business that you work in. So let me just kind of figure out how to go back here. and number 2, that one's up now. So now we're talking in terms of the size of the group that you're dealing with or managing. So, at Mayday, we work with businesses who are 2 entities. We work with businesses who have more than 100 entities, all on Xero. So, okay, great, cool, great mix here. 2 to 5, 6 to 10, great, okay, awesome. Very cool. Okay, we've got some big groups out there too, 31 to 50 entities, 51 plus. Okay, great. All right, well, thank you all for responding to that nice and quickly. That's really helpful. And yeah, that'll certainly, I think, based on where everyone's at, this series will be super relevant and valuable. Okay, so final thing from me before handing over to intros, I just wanted to say that this entire series is very much framed against the backdrop of how can we be valuable to our target customer. That really channels through everything that we're trying to do at Mayday and CFO Tech Stack. So there's a reason I'm not wearing a Mayday t-shirt. This isn't product marketing. This isn't a product demo. There are no product demos throughout this series. Obviously, if you're interested in any of the apps, you can go ahead and book your own demos with them. But we want this to just be based purely on delivering educational, relevant, valuable content and insight. Because we want to right the misconception that you can't scale with Xero into your growth phase, because you can. But we also don't want to overcorrect and replace one myth with another. There are times where another solution might be the answer. There are times where you're going to grow so large, so complex, have so many different nuanced requirements that maybe Xero and its ecosystem will no longer be the right fit for you. But we believe wholeheartedly that there's a good chunk of people who go too early, too soon, and can do a lot more with Xero. So that's me done. Hopefully you don't hear from me again, because that was a lot. But yes, thank you all for coming. And I want to now hand over to Andrew Hirst, first and foremost, to give a little bit of an intro. And I know, Andrew, you've been at Xero for a long time. You've spent a lot of that time in this space. And so I'd love to have you kind of introduce yourself, but also share what you've seen, where Xero's at with respect to this community.
Yeah, thanks, Jack. Like, very quick background about myself. I was an accountant in practice for a decade, and I've been at Xero for the last 10 years. So I kind of split my time in practice and working for an app partner or for an app. So Xero itself, like, it's kind of strange. We've got 100% of the audience already using Xero. That's not always the case, especially in this sort of market, the larger end, which is, I actually find that kind of surprising. Xero's like, it's 18 years old now. It's actually been around for a long time. There's a little over a million businesses using it in Australia, so maybe it's not that surprising. But while we work with Mayday, I want to sort of talk around how that fits together. Xero was originally built sort of, you think back in 2006, where it was built from the ground up deliberately to be a broad, horizontal, small business platform that focuses on accounting, payroll, and now payments. So from that background, we were always going to work across a great range of businesses with really varying needs, and we were never going to meet everyone's needs perfectly. So from the get-go, we had an API to build in like apps like Mayday to help us meet certain business needs, be it a workflow or a certain vertical, like retail or hospitality as an example. And that foundational platform we've seen really grow. So it grows across a wide range of businesses, but we can't do that alone. We do that and we partner with third-party programs like Mayday as a great example. And that allows us to, from a business perspective, it really opens up our addressable market as to who can use Xero. With Mayday as an example, it really expands the size of the business that's appropriate for Xero as well. And Holly and Ryan are going to talk a bit more about that. From our example, in terms of multi-entity, we've seen that start to grow probably more recently. We originally would go down more of a vertical or a path in terms of particular industries, where multi-entity is an area where Xero it's okay, but it's not perfect and it doesn't meet those really the nuanced needs and workflows that come with a large group. So that's why we work with Mayday, who really delves into those needs and are absolute specialists, and in my opinion, the leaders in the market at the moment. That's why we're here. We're here to talk about how that works. So what we find a lot of the time is it's fairly surprising to have a very large business on Xero, but it only works if you're using a third-party app. Xero as a standalone probably wouldn't meet your needs. What we're seeing from the market perspective is firms are kind of holding on to hold on to Xero because it's an existing platform. They know how they're using it. There's a very big cost differential between ourselves and the next mid-market play, which Jack sort of touched on, We are sort of seeing going the other way, where people are on an ERP, then can move to Xero and say Mayday together and get a better experience from that. That's not a given across the board, but we're finding there's a bit of a trend of that taking place. So hopefully that gives a quick introduction to who we are. A lot of people already use it, which makes it a lot easier to explain how Xero works. But more importantly, we can't do this sort of stuff without Mayday, and we deliberately have built Xero to have an API that's easy to connect into to let this take place.
No, I appreciate that, Andrew, and a great, I appreciate the support for Mayday, but obviously there's a whole lot of tools out there as well that I'm sure many of these guys are using. The reporting tools, the consolidation apps, the spend management approvals processes. We'll hear from a number of those products and other people who are using them. But yeah, as you said, like multi-entity is a very interesting challenge and something that we're very focused on. But along with us, there's generally a need for 1, 2, 3 other very cool products, which is to that ecosystem point that like there's a lot of flexibility out there, and we're happy to be involved in part of that conversation. And yeah, thanks to Xero for being so open and willing to work with businesses like us. So I suppose, Holly, I'm keen to kind of hand over to you now, so that everyone kind of has the opportunity to meet you. I know we've done a little bit together in the multi-entity space, but yeah, can you share kind of your role and what you're seeing or what you've seen? Maybe you've got a success story or two that you can share. Yeah, anything that you feel is relevant.
Yeah, so I'm Holly Otto, National Account Manager here at Xero. So previously to Xero, I worked in practice in mid-tier and boutique firms and had a few hands-on clients where they were client groups and working with the terrible processes that were in place. Came to Xero because I loved it. So in practice, I was putting most clients on, all clients onto Xero, but I did dabble in the software consulting space too at that mid-tier firm. So working on ERP implementations and working with them on how they were going to move across. Then worked at Xero, so work with the larger firms, and most of those firms are working with some of these client groups. So we're just definitely getting more and more inbound calls and queries on when Xero is suitable and when an ERP system is suitable. But then outside of Xero, own a couple of or a few laundromats. We're just in our process of opening a third, so smaller group, but still run into those challenges that we see across multi-entity. And then we purchased a farm machinery business back earlier in the year. So we've actually just gone through moving to an ERP. So kind of got both lenses of when it was necessary and what that choice looked like when we were going through, because initially I definitely did think we were going to move it onto Xero. So yeah, that's my experience.
That's interesting. I didn't realize you had some of your
Yeah,
own businesses going.
I thought that, Jack. I probably should have given you a heads up, but no, it's giving me a good lens of both, sides of the coin, and very passionate about this space. And that's why, Jack and I have been working pretty closely together in some of these with events and whatnot, because it's definitely a space that you continue to learn in and learn from other experts. So excited to be here today.
Why do you think now seems to be, because I know, we're only relatively new as a business, CFO Tech Stack's relatively new as a community, but it just seems like the timing is right. If we launched 10 years ago, it might not have been the right time for an app like Mayday or a community like CFO Tech Stack. So what are you seeing out there in terms of, the growth of businesses that are on Xero, the desire to stay on it? I don't know if there's anything you can add around why now is kind of this conversation around multi-entity seems to be so timely.
Yeah, I've got a few hypotheses myself and things that we've just heard. So I think now we're just seeing more and more wealth and larger client groups. Like it's just hitting every accounting firm where they're just growing those client groups and the structures that are around them. And then more and more moving internationally. So again, the growth there, but also with talent, like talent's just moving around so much. So where we've got accountants who started off in public and then moving to industry, I think they're using Xero and getting so experienced in Xero and then moving into what looks like an archaic setup and system when they change jobs, and then kind of wanting to change that and bring back the technology that actually is much easier to use.
There's some good, that skill set piece comes up quite a bit actually. There's a lot of people that hire in, a new team member or or when they're being presented with software options, they're going to their team and saying, which way do you guys want to go? And because the vast majority of people can pick up, use, or already know Xero, it just makes hiring so much easier. It means that, and ultimately the solution can still be better. So I think that's another key element that, like Ryan, would be keen to get your thoughts on too. But there's maybe a misconception that it's going to be better on an ERP, and that the only reason not to go is cost or the time frame. But there can also be the investment of time, money, resources for the experience to not actually be as good as what you'd get with Xero, plus a few apps that can do the job. So yeah, no, thanks, Holly. That's really, I think the international piece is super relevant as well. Businesses are basically day one going, I need to work across multiple regions, which is very cool to see.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess Xero kind of gives that flexibility with the global footprint to get there too, which is a big piece over some other software vendors.
Yeah, absolutely. And having, bank feeds that have been there for 15 years where others you have to pay extra to get them. So it's interesting. So Ryan, I mean, now I know you've been sitting here for a while, so probably a good time to have you kind of introduce yourself so that people know your background. But for all of these sessions that we're running, it was very important to us that we didn't just have app providers there, that we had in-house finance people, people with that experience who are now, experts, implementers, whatever it is, but someone who's not just associated with any individual app. So important that you're here today as well. Would love to have you share your experience, where you're at, and this kind of broader Xero for Groups topic, what you're seeing, working with clients on, whatever's relevant.
Thanks, Jack. I appreciate it. No, I don't work for any software companies, but it's nice that there are 4 accountants on the call, and you guys have moved over onto the other side. But I've also moved on to another side from my past profession, which was being a full-time CFO in high growth startups, which I spent 10 or 15 years doing that. I was similar to a bunch of you guys, that I worked in large chartered accountancy, and then moved into startup. But over the last 5 years, our business, TWIYO Capital Advisory, we have worked with about 100 different startups, acting as the virtual CFO. And we also do a bunch of transactional work. So we're an early stage corporate advisory business, trying to help people manage both some elements of reporting and forecasting, but also just making really great decisions based on the data they have. And inevitably that it moves into conversations around structure and setup and systems and things like that. So for us, like the conversations around Xero and maximizing its use are, I think we talk about all the time. And for us, it's, let's say, vast majority or even the entirety of our clients do use Xero. And that's also because of the influence and the belief that we have that it is the best in breed system, and that conversations around ERP are best had as things mature. And there's a lot of things that we could go on there. But look, my background again is still being a CFO and advising a number of startups, but also trying to make sure that they're making really good decisions.
Do you have a lighthouse example that you would go to among, your, either from your experience doing this or within your client base, who it's like, just because everyone here wants to know what has been achieved. We can all speak broadly to what we're seeing in the market, but I don't know if you've got one that you can kind of say, look, these guys ran or this kind of business with this many entities, these complexities, and there were some real challenges there, but they managed to overcome it. I'm not putting you on the spot a bit, but.
No, it's okay. Look, I think about, we did a lot of work with, and in franchising, and franchising is different when they're actually owned by different legal owners. But there is still this concept of reporting on multiple entities across franchises, even if they are independent. You want to be able to roll them up. You want to roll up the units that are corporate owned, the ones that are not, and have all these different subgroups. And that's something we spend a lot of time doing. I remember actually Andrew just reminded me that that's where we met first 10 years ago, where I first moved probably 60 or 70 entities onto Xero, and some of them were companies that we didn't even own. They were our franchisees companies. We moved some of our own, we moved some of theirs, and we sat in a room for a week doing it. But it was worth it. And I think that the comparison was, and that was a business called Zambrero at the time, which is a national or international Mexican restaurant franchise. And I remember the comparison was Guzman and Gomez, who are obviously a very large business now, and like they were using and they used NetSuite at least at the time, and they had NetSuite point of sale through the NetSuite for all its corporate units and franchises. And I used to think, God, that would have been such a big thing. That would have been like what we ended up putting together was something so neat, so effective, and cost conscious to franchisees who are obviously were. And that's a very tight. Restaurants have a very tight margin, and that's something that needs to be really considered. So it was really effective, and then as a result of that, it was really, really a good experience of like bringing that over.
Yeah, I mean, maybe there's a good link back there. You know, if you worked with Andrew on this, Andrew, to get kind of your experience here, having you know, a long tenure in this space, working with groups. What have you, you know, from 9 years ago and whenever it was that you spoke to Ryan about, you know, setting Zambreros up on Xero to what you're doing now, or what the Xero team is doing now in this space? How have things evolved? What have you guys learned? And what do you think, yeah, could be helpful to people who are out there thinking, I don't know if I can do this on Xero anymore, or if I don't know if I'm the right structure for this?
Yeah, 9 years is about 2.5 lifetimes in the world of software. So that was a long, long time ago, a few different variations. Look, usually it just comes down to the needs of the frustration. So the common frustrations you'd see, and Holly, feel free to jump in here, it's usually stuff around like month-end reporting or quarter-end reporting is usually the trigger. And so if they're using another platform that's taking forever, you're on a server-based system and you're manually requesting information from various branches or external parties, and it's hard to collate that information. Using Xero, let's go with reporting as an example. There's some great applications that can do consolidation where they pull in information and they can produce management reporting, which is amazing. And like that, they can reduce sort of month-end times. And I'm talking some clear examples here. We can take like 1 or 2 weeks down to like 2 or 3 hours. So that is phenomenal. And it's real time. It actually changes the reporting motion rather than being a quarter end. It's a real-time report that can be run all the time. So it stops being like a board report into like a real-time management report into a dashboard. And some of the challenges that take place, especially with some of the larger platforms like ERPs, they'll have some really great, I'll go with inter-entity transactions, some really great options there. But being able to automate that is really hard to do with some of the traditional ERP. I'm not taking away from ERPs at all. There's a great place for them. But with Xero and some of the apps like a Mayday, that is so much easier. So being able to reduce that frustration. If we go to some, like if we get the not-for-profit space, that's been huge. They're hugely cost conscious. They've also got some risk around compliance in terms of retaining a deductible gift recipient status, and having a really like an easy to use, high visibility program like Xero in conjunction with other programs allows them to manage that risk and have complete visibility. But as you mentioned with Zambrero, you've got this mix between the corporate owned and local owned. That's a different world where you need to get access to organizations that you don't have legal or financial control over, where Xero allows that to take place, and there's a lot more flexibility. In a wholly owned group, that's not a problem. It's usually not a frustration we see. So it really comes down to what's the issue the group is trying to solve, and some side cases can save huge amounts of time. The other bits you mentioned there, if you use, for example, NetSuite, the point of sale software, if you're using a more flexible program, you just get a really broad range of other applications that can bolt in, and that's really using Xero more like a platform where you bolt in a bunch of other applications to make it work for you. So I think it's probably that the flexibility is one of the key items that's worked in its favor.
I mean, I've worked in a few different apps as well, and the amount of time and investment you have from a whole team of people in a very specific area, to imagine trying to replicate that as one business trying to do everything just seems like an impossible task, that it couldn't actually be done. It would only ever be at a surface level across, you know, to solve every problem, but to a surface level, it seems like the only way you could do it if you're trying to do everything. Whereas if you go to the Xero App Store and look at spend management or something, or reporting, there's going to be 10, 15 apps for each of those, where you've got a whole team of people investing every single day. How do we make this better and solve these problems? Because they figured out that there's the nuanced example. There's something that only not-for-profits do, or there's something that only manufacturing businesses need for spend management, for this process, for that. And that level of vertical focus in so many different areas lets you kind of pick and choose. And then also, if you sign up to an app and then 3 years later they stop investing in the product and they stop evolving it, you can just move to another one. Or if there's some revolutionary new piece of tech out there, you can move and you're in control. I think that to that point of flexibility is kind of unmatched. But
Yeah.
I mean, we've got a question and it's just come through. So feel free, if you got any other questions, please let us know. I haven't even had a chance to read it, but I'm just going to go for it. I'm a franchisor. I'd love to get real-time or at least easy to see month-end consolidated reporting and comparisons store to store. Does anyone have any experience here or any suggestions for where David can look?
Yeah, I think that's probably what we're seeing now, definitely. And Hirst, you can probably speak to some of this too, but many, many more inbound franchisor queries on how they can kind of get reporting across the group and start benchmarking the shops as well across the group at a head level office. So definitely seeing like Cheesecake Shop as an example. There's a public case about them on Spotlight's case studies, but they are about over 200 now in AU/NZ, and they moved onto Xero and Spotlight for the purpose of getting that consolidated reporting and bringing that. The consolidated reporting was just getting out of control doing that manually, so as they were growing. So moved on to Spotlight, and now it's literally a click of a button to get the management reporting. But there's so many apps out there now that are doing this really well. So the likes of Dashboard Insights, which we've been working really closely with, yeah, so many, Fathom, Futurally, all working across the consolidations.
Well, Ryan, you did this in the real world, in a franchising situation.
Yeah, I've probably done it with maybe with 10 different franchises. But like there's I think the software is one part of it, and the other part is also about just working to the nuances of franchises and making sure that if, as a franchisor, you have the right agreement to get everyone on the same software, to get on the platform, to get access to all these sort of things. Like I look at it in 2 ways. Like one is like, you know, daily or weekly insights around sales performance and sales mix, which I think is best served in the point of sale. So building some sort of dashboard in there. But then when it comes to month end and it comes to bringing in the full general ledger and cash and profit and things like that, then you've really got to work on the foundations of how the system actually works. Like, do you have the right to put this system in place? Will people participate in it? And the sooner you do that, the better. And then after you do that, you really want to get everyone on the same system, which I think should be Xero. And you want to use the same chart of accounts, and you want to use the same service provider doing things the same way, putting inventory on the balance sheet should you need to. Otherwise, you're going to have different sets of accounts with different general ledgers done by different people on different days. But so there's this really important uniformity that you got to do, which is one is about the systems that unlock that, and one is about actually going through and taking the time to put it in place. I think the outcome is fantastic once you get there, and I think it adds a lot of value to a franchisor group long term as well.
Thanks, Ryan, for that. And I mean, as a follow-up to that was, I think there's a couple of questions here around, reporting on product and service, or reporting to different tracking categories and managing that. We know that, Xero files have a limit of 2 tracking categories. Is there a good solution you've seen out there for wanting to be able to kind of piece together reporting in more dimensions than that?
So you just replied just to
Yeah,
Jack.
Oh, no, that's fine. Oh, feel free, whoever might know.
Questions coming in thick and fast, which is great. So yeah, currently there's only 2 categories for the tracking categories. I think there's up to 200 plus within those. So it really depends on what you're looking to achieve with the tracking categories. For us, like in the laundromats, we've actually just got the one entity at this stage and using those for locations. And then there's another one that we're using within that. But it depends what you're looking to use it. So if there's many, say, not-for-profits that are using it for project management, and then if it was something in that realm, they can start to look at an app that might be better suited to managing those types of projects and looking at the different divisions and tracking pieces that you're wanting. But currently it is 2 and not kind of in the 90-day roadmap to adjust that.
The tracking categories are actually designed for departmental reporting. So it's not designed to track jobs. I think that's probably where we mainly get lost. So using it for job management, which it does, it just runs out pretty quickly if you've got more than a couple hundred jobs. I'd say you're looking more of a job management front-end app rather than using Xero, or using something like there's a base product inside the Xero suite called Xero Projects, which gives you far more detailed reporting, a lot more flexibility. So the tracking categories is like one of those things. It's like a reporting function that we threw out just to meet some departmental requirements, and people have used in a range of different ways. But unfortunately, we are limited just to those two options with 100 under each.
Yeah, I mean, we've spoken to a few other finance people around this, and obviously people would love 3 or 4 or whatever it is, given the unique requirements that everyone has. But some have worked around that to say, like, look, I've just got one of my tracking categories has, region dash this, so that I can track regions very specifically, and then, within that same list, I've got venue dash, so you've then multiplied your effective tracking categories. Just a bit of a workaround or a hack to do that. And I think something that people don't realize that we can do with Mayday is the automation of to automate the reallocation of expenses and revenues across tracking categories as well. Because I know, if I get a bill for $1,000, I really want to allocate that across a whole bunch of different tracking categories. I don't want to have to go through line by line in Xero and say, okay, I'm going to split this out into 25 different lines, and 2.5% of each, 2.5% needs to go to each venue or location or department or whatever it is. Those are the kinds of things that you can set up with an app like Mayday, for example. So, from a departmental reporting perspective, you can do some pretty powerful stuff just with the 2 tracking categories that are there. But yeah, hopefully that's helpful.
That might lead into the question from Ant there, because one of Ant's questions is you'd like a bill automation app. So we're using, I'm assuming, like an OCR app where you feed in a bill and it sort of reads you the receipt and starts coding it for you. I can't think of a solution that does that across multiple entities. Currently, as you mentioned there with HubDoc, it's entity by entity. But if you put it through head entity, then have an automatic recharge facility through, say, Mayday, that's how we would usually recharge between entities. But might not be what you're looking for. I'm not sure.
I was going to say, Ryan and Jack are probably better to speak to that too, because I think sometimes, especially at Xero, we're getting the inbound from the get-go, but part of our role is working with our partners. So our accounting partners is where we work. So we'll generally introduce these large client groups to an accounting partner who will then take them on the journey of the whole ecosystem and the deep dive into what they're needing and the app stack piece too. So I don't know if you guys have some extra points to add on that.
Ryan, do you want to?
I mean, there's a couple of things we're covering over here, but like if you look at the questions in the chat, if you're talking about like, products and services, like I'd be looking at, what's driving that originally. Is it a point of sale, a CRM, or is there another app that could make sense to derive that reporting? Because I think the ground level, number of item A sold is probably better served in wherever that's originating from, and then there are ways to bring it in. And I think that there is an art to designing a nice chart of accounts and fully utilizing the 2 tracking codes to their most potential, and making sure that you have a really sleek chart of accounts. It's right across all the entities. You've sort of put it out and planned it out, and we do that with our clients too. And I think that's how you can maximize the use of those things. And that'll get you pretty far, I think. And that's where you got to look at other front end apps, like Andrew said, around how you would do that. And then there is one way that you can try to bring it home together, because you may have, there's some stuff in this app and then there's some stuff in Xero. And then that's where you look at some of those other tools. Like when we have some of our clients and we do use Fathom for reporting, we can get P&L and balance sheet and cash flow information coming through to that and provide commentary. We'll also work with the client, and it may be, it won't all be perfectly automated, and that might be a thinking thing too perfectively, but you go and try to find number of items sold, number of franchises sold, number of leads, and you take that from other systems and you put it into one beautiful place and hopefully compare it back to what your expectations were on those things. So you can put it together, and I think that's still totally doable and cost effective and not inefficient.
Yeah, I was just going to add to that, Ryan, like on David's questions there with comparing XYZ across a group of entities. Definitely that's the beauty now, I think, of things that are running with Power BI, like your dashboard insights or your Atani, to be able to build dashboards that are not just pulling data from Xero, but pulling it from the specific software that the entities are using. So if you've got an inventory specific software that they're using, you're not just getting the data from Xero. You can overlay what you're getting from the inventory system and Xero into a really neat dashboard that uses Power BI pulling from multiple different APIs.
What I would
So
add to
with-
that is that there is a and I agree so strongly with that, is that there are parts of when you want to look at someone's Xero account where it's better to look at the end of the month, and that's because of the delays in receiving a bill or the timing of a bank rec. Sometimes you can look at Xero in the middle of the month and get a false read of things, whereas and it would be a real travesty to wait an entire month to look at the number of sales of item A and B. Is that there are some things you have to do daily and weekly, and they're better served in the way that you said, and then there are some things that bring everything home in your monthly reporting. And the more that you try to bring these things together and assume that they're all going to happen at the same time, like you'll inevitably fail. So you've got to bring out those things that need to be daily, weekly, and what needs to be monthly, and then how do they come together? But they're different. They're fundamentally different.
And I think one that came up on our building an enterprise level system with Xero series was like for e-commerce businesses, Shopify is kind of their home of items sold, and it's a fantastic platform with a lot of data, a lot of transactions going through it. And the learning there for businesses as they grew up was make sure that you're not pushing every single transaction through to Xero, because it's not necessary to live there. It'll overwhelm the ledger, and you don't need it for reporting anyway. So, you have all that daily transactional level information, thousands of transactions running through something like Shopify, and a daily balance going through to Xero for your accounting requirements. And that also extends the life of Xero a lot further as well, in terms of making sure that you're not reaching any of the, the soft limits that are in there. And another quick call out, Ant, I think you asked about approvals as well. So there's a couple of apps out there. I know Approval Max is part of this series as well. So thumbs up from Andrew there. So definitely check them out if you've got purchase orders and approval processes in your business. I know there's other spend management tools out there that also have those approval processes. So feel free to look at the Xero App Store for those. And then we've got a question here around consolidating multiple Xero files. So, I think there's a few apps that we see our customers using quite often. Join is a big one, nice, simple solution. They're part of this series, but you've also got apps like Fathom, Ryan, you've mentioned, Spotlight, Calxa. I don't know if there's any others. I mean, I know there are others, but any others that you guys see and use on a frequent basis?
Yeah, I think
There's one more. There's one more called Sift with a Y, out of South Africa. That's a good consolidation. In terms of building at the core of Xero, it's been on our list for a while, but multi-entity, like if we spread that across, say, 4 million businesses with Xero globally, it's not probably on our absolute core sweet spot. So not to say we're never going to build it. It's just there's no plans at the moment to build that. I'm not sure that's probably what I'm saying. So it's not an all-time no, but it's definitely not a yes right now. I wouldn't say it's coming anytime soon.
And I think it's why we can be so good at the core accounting, because it's so focused on the core accounting needs at its heart, and there are app partners that are solving it currently.
We do actively track how many users have, like, for example, repeat logins, so we know how many multi-entity groups there are across Xero to understand basically the use case of business need. And I'm not sure what it would be, but we're probably talking less than 0.5% of users that have multiple entities. It'd be a really small percentage. Just the harder we get into the Xero program, we're solving smaller and smaller program issues and problems. And so prioritizing those compared to the big broad problems we've had, it just gets a little hard to prioritize. It's not my job, by the way, to decide what does and doesn't get built.
Wouldn't want it.
No, it is really hard, because we're trying our best to make as many people happy with the resources we've got, which is ultimately why we relied a lot on this ecosystem we talked about with Mayday as an example. We work a lot with applications.
Well, and I think to that point, because you've got 5, 6, 7 whole companies building consolidations, there's a lot more in terms of optionality for people out there. So, you can basically go and get exactly what you want in terms of a consolidation app, rather than kind of maybe a solution that's in the product, but, isn't exactly what you want. So now you can go and pick and choose exactly what you need. Look, in terms of time, we're about to finish up. There's a few more questions in there. I don't know, Ryan, Holly, Andrew, if you're reading those, or if anyone's got any answers to any of them off the top of your head. But if we don't get to anything, happy to take those questions down and get back to people. But any last comments from anything you're seeing there?
Yeah, I was just going to talk to, I mean, so many of these are so specific on specific needs and whatnot. And it can be a really complex and overwhelming space, especially when you're looking at, thinking that you need to move on to an ERP because it's, one solution sitting there. But really, I think important to bring in experts or to bring in knowledge from other places, and don't be afraid to talk to many different experts in different fields to get some of those answers. Like there's one question on here, Edwin, on the number of low volume reconciliations and how to kind of manage that with the data that's coming into Xero. I'm assuming that's what it's meaning. But some of those things we can actually look to, because we've got an open ecosystem, there's partners out there that are building things that are changing the game for finance teams. There was one, for example, where the finance team had to push through 200 journals every month. So there's someone who built that for them to just punch through the journals into Xero and things like that. So there's a wealth of experts out there to talk to a lot of these things and the nuances.
And I'd say that's why CFO Tech Stack exists as well. So go to cfotechstack.com, subscribe to the newsletter. We share an article every week on different finance leaders' tech stack. So there's a question in here of what are the most used apps. Follow that, see what other people are using. We have an app stack map as well, which provides kind of like the top apps that are used in all the different categories: forecasting, reporting, consolidation, spend management, intercompany, to give you kind of a bit of a starting point. There's also an advisor directory on the website. So Ryan's listed on there as one of the kind of people that you can go to and speak to. But there's others out there as well. So have a look at who kind of seems to be your kind of person, and have a chat to them because they've been here, they've done it before with other businesses. So I think you're right, Ollie. Like there's a lot of questions here. There's a lot of very specific scenarios, and there's only so much we can cover at kind of a broad level that at some point you're going to need somebody to go in and look at your specific business and address your specific needs.
Jack, did you want us to do a quick burn through these questions? Just a really
Feel
one
free.
or two.
Yeah, go for it.
In terms of sales agreements incorporated into auto invoicing or annual increases and say like a subscription cost like Xero, it's a great program called Ignition, based out of Australia. Another one called Go Proposal out of the UK. They're predominantly designed for professional services, but it's pretty flexible with an inbuilt payments engine. It's really good. Do you have any others on that one there?
I've lost the question.
That's Edwin's to start off with in terms of incorporation.
And sorry, Edwin, I've totally misinterpreted your question. So if I'm looking at that, as Andrew said, like we've got Xero projects within Xero. In terms of other project tracking, there's a category within, if you go to Xero Marketplace. I'm a big Googler, so I always just type in Xero Marketplace into Google and it'll get me there. But within that, you can search for fields, industries, what type of job you're looking for an app, and it will come up with a whole range. So for yours, Edwin, I would type in job tracking or project tracking, and it should bring up a whole range of apps. And then within the apps that come up in there, it will give you reviews from other users and what their experience has been with that app, how it integrates with Xero, what it's running, etc. So it kind of gives you a good starting point to look at some of those.
And that might answer the bottom question too, in terms of most used apps. So we rank them on this list to see which are the most used apps. So and you got some user reviews, actually pretty brutally honest, but there's some great reviews there as well.
So I think there's over 1,000 now, so it's pretty crazy. But definitely heard some good things about pro spend in this space as well. I think we were talking about that earlier.
In terms of Xero being suitable for complex accounting situations, look, I'd say Xero is actually good with simple accounting. What I mean by that, say you've got like a related party cross-border debt obligation, or you're dealing with hedges or so on. Xero is not really designed for that. You're going to have to use a bunch of workarounds. Ryan, I'm not sure if you have like a deliberate cutoff as to say, by the way, Xero is not right for that sort of financial instrument.
Not so much. I think it's too hard to say. And look for us, the goal is to extend the life of these things as much as possible to a certain point, because unless the ROI is there, you just wouldn't actually do it. But I think each use case is different. But the ones that you just mentioned there, then I don't think they're appropriate for Xero. Or you'd have to do it all the work on a spreadsheet like you ordinarily would do, and then post the necessary adjustments in, right?
But then, like, as an example, yeah, agree, Ryan, because it really depends on what it is. So we had an inbound query where we've met with them, and they've got a team of 60 to 80 in their finance team. And so some of their processes were very intricate and specific to what they were doing, but that's where we brought in the likes of an expert who works with our APIs and can help them to manage some of those processes. So it depends whether it's a process thing or a complex accounting situation. Yeah, it depends what it is in the detail.
Cool. And I'm happy to answer the last one as well. And I'll share my screen here. I know I kind of mentioned it before, but just so you're aware kind of what I'm talking about with respect to this app map. This is kind of what we're talking about. So this is something CFO Tech Stack put together. And this is by no means every app. There are so many apps out there, so feel free to go beyond this. But in terms of most used apps that we see, having done this conversation with so many different finance leaders and teams around what apps are you using in your business, this is a great starting point. So feel free to check that out if you're looking for the most used apps. But yeah, I think that's, I don't know, was that not sharing? Sorry, I don't know if that was sharing.
Yeah, no, it wasn't sharing.
No,
Yeah, okay, sorry, thanks.
I had
There
it in
we
my
go.
head.
There we go. All right, so you've got that on screen there. So that's just on the CFO Tech Stack website if you feel like having a look at it. But beyond that, guys, I think it's probably time we wrap up. So very quickly, I'll just speak to the upcoming sessions that we've got. So Monday 19th of August through to Friday 23rd of August are when the sessions are going to happen. Day one each day, all at noon AEST time. We've got month-end automation with Mayday. We've got accounts payable and financial controls with Approval Max. So I know there's a question in here earlier about that, so probably a relevant one for you. We've got spend and FX management for groups, and that one's with Airwallets. We've got HR and payroll for distributed teams with Employment Hero, and simplified consolidated reporting with Join. So all hopefully relevant topics to groups on Xero. Some might be relevant for you, some might not be. Feel free to come along to the sessions that you can. If you haven't registered for any of them, you can use that link shown there on screen or go to that web address, check out the whole series, sign up for the ones that you want. And I'll very much look forward to seeing you there. Thank you, Andrew, Holly, and Ryan. Great chatting, and appreciate everyone. I know you've given us a few extra minutes, so thanks very much for your time. No worries. Okay, leave you to it. See ya.
Thanks.
Thanks,
Bye.
guys. Bye.